accepted electrical hazard recognition training is the Saudi Aramco training, as we just talked about. So in this instance, not all power sources were controlled by LOTO. So this included temporary power supplies by electrical generators. These generators still require LOTO control. This would include specific signage, block control and barricades. There is no difference between permanent and temporary power, and this again isn't spelled out anywhere in any of the GIs. It basically talks about the voltage being used during the operations. So when you think of a temporary generator out on site for a substation, that's no different than having your main supply power. So we should be controlling that the same. So an example was, we seen energized control panels which are actually going through tests, but yet the generator external outside just had no additional signage on there. It just looked like a general generator, and it was not controlled by lock, so anybody could have come along, de-energize that, or any other way actually energize that generator. So we must include that as part of our controls, not just inside the substations. Another one there, if you see the second one down, so this was related to a lot of, or a fair few people that we've seen inside some of these buildings not wearing the required arc-rated clothing. So the arc-rated clothing, as again in GI 2.721, electric arc flash hazard mitigation, if you look at section 8.1, everyday work clothing for Saudi Aramco and contractor employees who enter substations or conduct electrical work on electrical equipment operated at higher than 240 volts shall be arc rated with ATPV minimum of 12 cal. So again, it's very clear in the GIs that we do have to have these controls in place. So now we'll move on to isolations. So the term lockout tagout refers to a safety procedure that ensures that dangerous machines and energy sources are properly shut off and do not unexpectedly start up before the completion of work. Isolation is important because it provides protection of personnel and assets by safely controlling hazardous energy sources during work activities. You must implement proper isolation to control hazardous electrical energy sources before any new installation or maintenance activities. There are several fatal mechanisms that are contributing factors for injuries that are caused by failing to properly isolate. Failing to stop or isolate equipment, failure to disconnect from the power source, failure to prevent unexpected restarting, failure to clear the area before restarting, and failure to provide suitably trained personnel and the correct required PPE. So now we just look at some of our general requirements, or minimum requirements. During job planning, an isolation plan shall be developed that shall identify all locations to be isolated, types of isolating devices to be used, and site job-specific procedures for isolating the equipment. For grassroots projects, contractors shall establish an isolation lockout and use of hold tags program that is compatible with JI 6.012 and CSM requirements. Prepare for the isolation by identifying the types of energy and all potential hazards generated by using the equipment information, procedures, and hazard identification when developing the specific work permits. Identify what needs to be locked or controlled by locating all hazardous energy sources. Communicate with all affected personnel. Tell affected employees about the lockout and why you have to do it. Additionally, further controls may include counter-signatures on permits from affected organisations as required. You must wear the appropriate personal protective equipment for the environment that you are in. Again, refer to these specific GIs for those requirements. Preparation for shutdown. Before an authorised employee performs isolation, the authorised employee should know the type and source of energy, the hazards of the energy, and the correct methods or means to control the energy. Isolate by immediate implementation of the LOTO procedure and associated documentation. Follow proper LOTO procedures. Apply approved locks and tags, which are obviously completed as required. Every person involved should apply their own unique lock as required. Isolate all energy source and tag the isolations locations. Fill out the tags with the information included, where and why the isolation exists, and who is the owner of the lock or isolating device. Remove and dissipate all potential sources of stored energy. Clear the area of personnel and equipment as required. Verifying installation. Before any work begins on machines or equipment that have been isolated, an authorised employee must verify that the machine or equipment has been properly secured and that the hazardous energy has been cut. Work permit issuers must double check with the workers to ensure all controls are in place. All department managers, division heads, supervisors, employees and contractors are responsible for ensuring compliance to Saudi Aramco General Instructions GI 6.012, isolation, logout and use of hold tags, and their local department logout tagout procedures. Management responsibilities include developing isolation, logout and hold tag procedures for their operations that comply with General Instruction GI 6.012. They are also responsible for developing isolation, lockout and hold tag procedures for specific equipment or processes and incorporating them into departmental operating instruction manuals. Thoroughly trained personnel, as per Saudi Aramco requirements and the relevant GIs that are required to participate in the programme to properly implement all elements of the programme, including location of isolation points and devices used to achieve proper isolation. Contractors and work crew must check and verify isolations before work begins and ensure implementation is in line with their reviewed isolation plan. Individual protection. Each individual worker, including contractors working on equipment, must install their personal locks and tags at isolation locations. So just go through the basic diagram. So you must identify locations and types of isolation devices required to be used to isolate equipment. Notify all affected personnel, must be notified of the isolation. Close energy isolating devices and lock them out. Lock the beneficial tabs and maintain a record of isolations. Clear the work area of equipment and personnel. Try to start energized equipment to verify isolation is successful. Remember, the Saudi Aramco electric isolation process has 4 key steps: lock, tag, clear, try. You should be aware that when isolating high voltage equipment, that there are some inherent unique hazards that could be present. In order to properly account for these, never attempt to isolate high voltage equipment unless the proper isolating permits have been completed and issued. You have received the proper specialised training in accordance with requirements, according with the revised GI 2.721 electrical arc flash hazard mitigation. You are using the proper operated arc flash PPE. as also highlighted in GI 2.721. So we'll just go through removal of locking devices. A lockout device may be removed when the job is complete or when a crew member completes his work or leaves the job site permanently. The supervisor must advise the operations supervisor that the work has been completed and that the locks and tags have been removed. Procedure for removal and re-energization equipment. So notify all personnel. It is vital that you communicate with all affected personnel that the lockout tagout devices are being removed. Ensure that all employees and contractors are removed from the area as energized. Lockout tagout devices. The person who places each lock and tag must be the one to remove it. For different operations, this responsibility may have transferred to another supervisor, which should also be documented. If the person who puts the lock on the tag in place is not available, follow GI 6.012 for removal instructions. Just note, no padlock or lockout device shall be cut or forcibly removed without the permission of the lock owner's manager or the shift manager. If you are not authorised, do not remove a lock or a tag. All personnel, whether Saudi Aramco employees or contractors, have both the authority and the obligation to stop any unsafe work within our operating facilities and project sites. If you observe any unsafe work that has the potential to injure personnel, damage equipment or harm the environment, you are empowered to stop the work and report your concerns to Saudi Aramco supervisory personnel, as well as those involved in the work. So just for key reference as well, these are our relevant GIs associated with electrical energisation activities. So obviously we have our work permit system. We have GI 6.212, isolation, lockout and hold tag use. GI 6.721, electrical arc flash hazard mitigation. This is the one that talks about all our different training requirements, depending on the level of voltage. Gas testing, construction safety manual, chapter 1.5, and safety management system element 6, safe operations, and our safety handbook. That's the end of the presentation. And as I said, the main reason behind this was to highlight some of the concerns that we have been seeing. Obviously, we are very well aware the high risk involved with this kind of activities. So we wanted to give you at least some understanding of some of the challenges that we've seen out there, but also the minimum requirements. If there's any questions, you can either discuss now, or happy to take any emails or messages at a later stage.
Thank you for the presentation. Is it